So welcome everybody. Thank you for coming to the November AigoraPlus monthly call. Here's the agenda for today. All right, so we'll do greetings and then we'll talk briefly about onboarding calls, a little bit about the AigoraPlus group, the pod or the message thread, AigoraCast check-in calls, go through the tutorial, and then see if we have anything else we want to talk about. All right, so for starters, why don't we go around and maybe we could, does everybody know each other at this point? Everybody on the call? Anyone feel like they don't know somebody? Karen, do you know everybody? Yeah. Maybe let's all just introduce ourselves quickly then. So I'm John Ennis. I'm president and co-founder of Aigora. I'm passionate about new technologies and sensory science. That's my intro. And something cool that I heard this week that I thought was really neat. Oh, did you guys see that now there are shopping carts that have cameras on them that recognize the items that you're putting in the shopping cart and will recommend other items to you based on what you put in your cart? Whether or not that's a good thing, I don't know. But but that's where the world has gone. Yeah. All right, Alex, did you want to introduce yourself next and say something cool?
Yeah, sure. I am Alex Feldmeyer. I work at Man Inc. in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm a sensory scientist here, and I primarily am the research arm of the sensory group. Something cool. I was just reading a cool paper on familiarity and how that affects how people like things, and if they're told that the food or the ingredients in the food is local, they'll also be willing to say that they like it more, even if they don't think it tastes right. I think it's funny.
Interesting. Okay, and Lauren, you're kind of next here in the alphabetical order, I think.
Yeah, I'm Lauren Rogers. I'm based in the UK. I'm a freelance sensory scientist. I work for all different companies doing anything they ask me to do, basically. Cool thing, I have had my head down in a report all week, so I don't know anything cool apart from the fact that it's almost finished.
Well, let me ask you this. In the course of doing your report, did you come across any cool new feature of, I don't know, analysis, PowerPoint, anything that you learned along the way?
I did get the hang of using Weka. I don't know if you've ever used that.
What is Weka?
It's a machine learning tool designed by some chaps at, I don't know how you pronounce it, but Waikato University in New Zealand.
Okay.
It's open source, spelled W-E-K-A.
W-E-K-A.
And it's not pronounced Weka, as he says in the introduction. It's pronounced Weka.
And what sort of tools are inside it?
Oh, everything. It's very good.
Is it
so
like an... Go ahead.
I did some predictions on, had consumers answer questions. And they had to answer a question, yes or no. And then I was trying to see if I could predict whether they said yes or no based on their overall liking score. So I did all the analysis using Weka, and it was very good.
Oh, that's very cool. Yeah, this does look cool. Yeah, Weka 3. Here, I'll put it on the screen so everybody can see it.
Yeah.
Is this, and let me do this.
Yeah, it's all free. And also there's lots of videos. In Future Learn, there's a course you can do, which I did just before Christmas last year.
Oh, look at that.
And there's also videos on YouTube. And it's very easy to use.
Well, there we go. Lauren, you were holding back. You had something awesome. All right, so Karen, you're next on the screen. So it's not alphabetical, it turns out. It's just in some random order that Zoom made up. So, Karen?
So I'm Karen Graves. I'm the Director of Sensory and Consumer Insights at Bell Flavors and Fragrances. So for us, like for me, we just got CompuSense. So it's for us, it's exciting because there's a lot of automated features versus what we were doing in the past. So I know that's not very sexy and new and exciting, but that's where we are. And I'm really excited that I got my Starbucks red cup this season. So did everybody get yours?
Oh, I don't. Yeah, I went to Starbucks and I joked with them about the so-called Satan cup. I don't know if you remember that from a few years ago.
Yes.
They had an all red cup, and because it didn't have Jesus on it, I guess people called it the Satan cup.
Well, we're trying to figure out like what it really says, because it's just kind of Mary, but there's E's and C's and, you know, I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Anything else? Any other cool, I guess, so CompuSense, that's new. So what are some of the features there that you are appreciating as far as the automated features?
Well, it's the simple things right now, just like the standardized report feature, like being able to quickly, right now we have a survey internally to look at multiple locations. So just to see to be able to quickly segment the data by each location and have a standardized report that comes out automatically, rather than in the past, we were doing that pretty manually, all in Excel.
Yeah, right. That's good. Yeah, that's good. It's interesting. I actually just did a AigoraCast call with, well, it's not out yet, and the call is still out for approval by management, so I'll just keep it to myself. But so hopefully it'll be up soon, the new call. And in that call, the guest was saying that standardized reporting has been great for them because it's forced them to standardize their data format. And then that has actually helped them with their data warehousing, because, you know, the fact that they are putting things out, yeah, it's really interesting, like kind of upstream effects. If you're like, okay, we have to have this output, therefore we need this input, therefore everything's got to be the same. Therefore, they can actually build their database more easily. So, right. Yeah, it's interesting, those kinds of effects. Hopefully you all will see the new. Tom Carr will be also up soon. I did an interview with him. So Tom Carr's episode will be up tomorrow. Yeah. But then I've got another one that'll be up soon that's quite good. I'm hoping that everything gets approved and it comes out, because it was a good one. All right, Stella, so you are in the, what's the, save the best for last year. Zoom arranged it so that you were at the end.
Right, so I'm Stella Salsa-Hickman, VP for Research and Consumer and Sensory Insights here at Bryson Group. Wow, something cool. Well,
Everybody on here has done their onboarding call, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, yeah. So if you're listening to this recording and you haven't done your onboarding call, I'm following up with people, but it is important because it really helps you to understand what people want. Yeah, but anyway, if you're listening, you haven't done your onboarding call, please do it. It really does help to set the direction. And actually, one of the other topics is I'd like to actually start doing quarterly calls, because it really helps me to check in with people and find out what's going on. You know, this is supposed to be a group for the users, so the more that I can get some idea whether or not it's useful, what would be useful, that kind of thing, the better. Okay, we have our group. That group has gotten very stagnant on LinkedIn, I have noticed, and maybe that's my fault too. How often do you all, are you even on LinkedIn? Is that a place that you find yourself very often, or no?
I think the most annoying thing about the LinkedIn messages is that it says something like, Alex has sent you a new message, or John has sent you a new message, but you don't know what it's about.
Oh, because you get an email.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Well, is there some other better way? You don't know whether it's
about something new or some, you know, a continuation of a topic that you were interested in.
Right. No, I agree. That is
weren't
annoying.
Interested in.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as we just saw, just sharing ideas, like Lauren, for example, if the LinkedIn wasn't such a pain, maybe you would have posted about Weka and everybody would have benefited from it, right? Because that's the sort of thing, that's the idea of the group, is how can we share? So does anyone have any better ideas about how we could share information with each other? I kind of feel like the LinkedIn group is not really operating as I hoped it would.
I feel like it's not a habit for everyone. Like, I know I got on LinkedIn more after I joined this group, and I'm kind of beginning to look at it more like a social media. Like, it's not necessarily like our personal social media, but I like scroll through it now as if it's like Facebook posts.
Right.
And I know I wasn't doing that before, and I think it's kind of like you also have to have the luxury of like 15 minutes in the morning to scroll, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So there's both, like, it's not really a habit necessarily maybe for everyone to check it. Yeah. And it's also, as Lauren mentioned, vague in the emails, but you also have to have a little extra time, I think.
Right. Would it be better if people simply sent me cool stuff when they saw it, and then once a week I did like a digest and emailed it out? Like, here's the cool stuff people sent me this week, or something like that. Would that be lower stress? I mean, if you just got an email once a week that was like all the cool stuff that, you know, was come across, then you just...
if it was an email from you rather than LinkedIn.
Right, just an email from me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Karen, Stella, anything, ideas about that?
Yeah, that seems fine.
Yeah, that seems fine. I don't know if you're thinking about this, John, along the line.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just like LinkedIn has its group of followers, perhaps it might be something you may want to consider having some type of app. I don't know.
Mm.
Where it's all AigoraPlus related. Because to Lauren's point, the only time I really go in, I'm not as frequent as I am on Facebook and or Instagram.
Right.
But when I do go in, it's frustrating that you can't see what it is that they're saying in the email. You have to literally go in. And sometimes I'm like, I'm lost in translation and what's going on anyway. So therefore, you know, I'm disconnected.
Right.
So maybe a unique AigoraPlus group app. I don't know, where there's constant feeds of what's going on, and people have the option to turn off or on or switch on the feeds, notification and all if they want.
Right. Okay.
It's all about data, so perhaps that might help you. It's all about automating. So
yeah. Well, in all my spare time, I'll build an app. Don't worry.
So
yeah, I'll get Artemis to build it. That'll be your first project.
there you go.
All right, I'll think about this though. Maybe the idea of send me stuff and I'll, there's got to be some better way to do this, some easier way. Okay.
Because I think I was just thinking about like the purpose. Like, is it more about like to promote or share information across this group, or is it more like to promote externally, right? So, you know, like what's your goal? What's the goal for us? Yeah. And if sharing, maybe it's just among the team. Maybe just an email is fine, you know, but if you want to do more like promoting externally, then that's a little different.
That's the idea of the pod, right? Okay, so the overall goal of the group is to fortify sensory science. Like, the reason that I started Aigora is I started to get concerned that the field is getting left behind to an extent. That there's this there's all the data science, big data stuff happening, new technologies that are really affecting every aspect of our lives. And I started to see claims being made by, and I'm sure you all see this too, like there's some crystal ball and you just use this app and it'll tell you what the trends are going to be and you don't need to do consumer research anymore. Like there's those sorts of claims going around, right? And because it's AI powered, it must be accurate. So I think that we need to fight back by like fortifying our own capabilities with like the machine learning tools like Lauren's using. You know, that it really is incumbent on us to like embrace the things that are good with all this new technology. So the idea of the pod is you see something interesting, you drop it in the pod, you post something interesting to your general feed on LinkedIn, then you go and you share it to the pod and everybody can go like it and then it gets visibility and then everybody in your network and other people's network sees this cool thing and that we have this influence, that we have like a core group of people who are dedicated to the new technologies, but then we have an influence on the wider field. That's the idea of the pod, which I now changed to be like the message thread because I actually found out that LinkedIn is trying to crack down on pods, and I thought if we're called a pod, then it might do something bad. I don't know. Because there are people out there, very unscrupulous, like influencers, who are in like hundreds of pods, and they're all just gaming the system as much as they can to try to get visibility. Yeah. Anyway, that's Campbell's law. You all know Campbell's law from social psychology? Any metric, if it's used to guide decisions, will eventually get corrupted. That's Campbell's law. And so if you've got like standards of learning in schools, like test scores, used to tell you when a school was doing well, if the students would have high test scores. So they made that the metric, and then it wrecked the whole educational system because then you start to teach to the test. So that happens again and again, and it happens on social media, where whatever it takes to get engagement, people will do it, even if it defeats the purpose. Well, okay. I mean, that's the idea of the pod, is that we would have like influence over the whole field and have a positive influence. Well, think about it, everybody, please, and send me good ideas if you have them. When you have them, I should say, optimistically. Okay, AigoraCast is now up. Who's listened to an AigoraCast episode?
I have.
Okay, Karen, would you like to check it out? It's on all the major platforms. It's actually also on Podcast Addict now and Podcast Nation or some other place. Anyway, you can search for it, AigoraCast, and if you like it, please tell people about it. And if you're on iTunes, leave us a 5-star review. Right now we have 6 5-star reviews, so I'm happy about that. That's nice that happened. One of them was from me, I think. So 5 unbiased 5-star reviews. Yeah, but it's interviews with industry experts on how new technologies are transforming sensory consumer science. And so far we had Chris Finley was the first guest, and then we had Gemma was the second guest, Gemma Hodgson. Third guest was Michelle Nigella, who some of you might know from HCD Research. The fourth guest was Chris Simons, Alex's mentor, PhD advisor. Tom Carr just did an episode. And over time, I would say anyone that's in AigoraPlus is welcome to be on the show. So if you'd like to be on the show, Lauren, you're booked to be on the show someday. Stella, Karen, we haven't talked about having you on the show. Have we booked you guys? No? Okay. Well, if you want to be on the show, let me know. We can book you. Anyone listening to this wants to be on the show. But we're now actually booked through March. There's been a great response. And several people I've never heard of have messaged me on LinkedIn to say, hey, I found the show and I really like it. So that's cool. Yeah. All right, check-in calls. I was thinking that we would do like quarterly calls, that we have like the like quarterly one-on-one call, 30-minute calls. Is that something you would want? Would that be helpful to you all?
Absolutely.
To have the chance to talk to me for 30 minutes just about whatever you're doing and get feedback or whatever. So, okay, I'm going to start doing that. I'll make that available. So there's the kickoff call, and then once a quarter, there'll be like a quarterly just check-in call. And, for that, during that half hour, I'm happy to answer whatever questions you might have. And I also would like feedback on AigoraPlus, how we can change it, make it better, how we can make the tutorials better for you. That's another big thing. Any other ideas that you have? Okay, now the tutorial walkthrough. Who tried the tutorial, ran it, attempted it, looked at it? 2 people? Okay, all right, well, let's go through it. And let's see how this goes. So
I just downloaded it, so.
Well, that's good. That's
one.
All right.
All right. Well, let me show you all what it does. Okay. So here is this is our studio.
Oh, so you got it in dark mode.
Yes. Yeah. If you use our studio, I try to do dark mode with everything. I actually have some eye problems from looking at too many computer screens in my life. So. Steve Jobs he really insisted that it should be a white screen because he wanted like it to look like paper. That was the thing. And that's why computer screens are white. That was a terrible decision. It did, who knows how much damage to people's eyes over the years. Okay. So the idea of this script is it takes us from a data set. I'm going to move this to the main screen and then share with the main screen. Okay, so here's, raise your hand if you've ever seen a data set such as this, where you've got something like...
There were so many gaps, John. What were they about? I couldn't quite follow them.
Oh, yeah, okay. So this was actually another AigoraPlus member who's not on this call sent me this data set. And what they actually had were 4 samples in a blind and branded condition, okay? And not all of the jar questions made sense for every... Some of the jar questions only made sense in the branded condition, and some only made sense in the blind condition, okay? So in an effort to... And also they had multiple different modes. So notice I've got jar flavor 1 through jar flavor 17, and then I've got jar other. I've got other modes of jar questions. They, I think, had 4 modes. They had like taste and smell and texture and another maybe. So I, in order to camouflage this, I changed it so that it's just flavor and other. And, it definitely does happen sometimes that you've got questions that are only appropriate for some products or whatever. So you have to deal with missing data. And so I just thought, well, this would be a good example. But in actuality, if you were to track this, you would find that there are patterns to these missing data, and they correspond to things being blind or branded in real life, IRL. So anyway, I mixed it all up and just camouflaged it. I made it so we've got 4 samples, and we've got 24 jar questions in 2 modes. And what gets made at the end of the day is, so I'll just run the script, and you can just proof that it works. I will delete the output here, and then I'll run this script. Okay, and you can see this thing appears. And what this is this is a series of charts. So this would just be one tool in your toolkit, but it makes this, it reads in a template file. So there's a template file that has this image, and it makes these slides. So what we've got is, we've got the flavor attributes first. Here are the flavor attributes for the first sample, and nice bar plots with the numbers, the percentages. All of this is being computed and done automatically. And when it's done, and I think this is an advantage over some of the other automated reporting tools out there, is this is an editable object. This is a PowerPoint object. So if you wanted to do something with this, you could. But we get these nice pictures, and we automatically select the variables that are relevant for each sample. So when there's missing data, like here, sample 2 had some missing data. We just don't see those variables. So you can see that the selection's automatic. Okay? So yeah, this sort of thing is helpful. So what we're going to do is just kind of go through the code and show you how this sort of thing happens. So I made this little script that shows you kind of step by step what happens in this tutorial. And then hopefully, you know, my goal is that you get, if there was just one goal, it would be that you get inspired by seeing this to want to go learn more. And once that happens, I would hope that you would take this code and take parts of it and steal it and pilfer it, make it part of your own little arsenal, you know. And I'm happy to answer questions if you have, like, hey John, what does this part do, or that part? I'm happy to answer those questions. Okay, so what I did here, let's kind of start, and I'll take you through step by step. So we load some functions and constants. Usually we've got constants, like here are the colors that we're going to use. The Aigora green is, it's RGB 134, 196, 144, and so on. Here's some other Aigora palette. Some information about the fonts that we're going to use, information about the slide width, and that kind of thing. Okay, so there's just some constants we have to set. So once all that happens, we're going to read in this data set, the AigoraPlus tutorial example jar data. And so what I've done is I've broken this apart for this explanation. So you can see over here in the console, kind of line by line, what happens. So the first thing that happens is we read in the data. So we get the data into R. Okay. And then we reshape it. And this is where, hold on 1 second, I'm sorry. Forgot to put my phone in airplane mode. Okay, there we go. Then we're going to reshape these data, because you can see right now it's all spread across. This command alone, if you're only going to learn one thing, honestly, this pivot longer thing, watch what happens. This command took the data that was in this long format with these kind of funny names, jar underscore flavor 1, whatever, and it turned it into data that had a mode variable that had the flavor or other, the variable, and then the response. And so this is called tidy data now. This is a much easier way to work with data. Okay, so I would say even if you don't use any of the rest of this, if you're just going to do a little bit of R for moving your data around, pivot longer and pivot wider are 2 great commands to learn about. And there's a good vignette on it. I'm happy to answer questions. Okay, now what we have to do is notice this response is a jar score, and it's 1 through 5. Typically, we bin that. I mean, how many people here would even use jar scores? Is that something you all see in day to day? Okay, great. Do you usually take that 5-point data and turn it into effectively 3-point data, where you've got 2 weak, just right, 2 strong? Pretty typical. Okay. So that's the next step, is that we're going to go through and the next little chunk of code. So what I'm doing here is I'm kind of taking like there's a long statement in the script which says that the jar data is assigned to be all this stuff. It's like, do this, then do this. The way to read our code is when you see this thing, it's called a pipe. That's like then. It's like start with this, then do this, then do that. That's the way that it's read out to the computer. Like the way I describe programming to other, the non-programmers here is programming is like giving instructions to the most stupid but enthusiastic person you've ever met. Like the person needs very, very pedantic instructions, but they're very enthusiastic and have a lot of energy. So if you tell them very carefully what to do, then they will do it happily. But if you tell them the wrong thing to do, they'll do the wrong thing very enthusiastically. So that's what we're doing. We're going to tell the computer very carefully what to do. So here, the next set of instructions are taking, if I just run this chunk here, what this is doing is it takes the, if the value is, okay. Oh, all right. There was a small issue here in that with the direction of the scale. I left that out. So 5 on their scale was too little. Okay. So in this case, what we were doing is I'm taking, if I have a 4 or a 5 that's considered on this scale, this is something else you got to watch out too for scale direction, of course. But it just so happened that a 5 here is 4 or 5 in this data set means that it's too little. 3 means it's just about right. A 1 or 2 means that it's too strong. Okay, so with that interpretation, if the response is greater than the jar value is 3. So the jar value is 3. Then we're going to just, for a second, give it the value 1. Otherwise, give it the value -1. And then what we do is we relabel that. -1 becomes, oh no, am I wrong? 1. Oh no, okay. Their scale was going the right way. Okay, it was 1 or 2 is too weak, 3 is just about right, 4 or 5 is too strong. And so what happens here is, if the value is greater than the jar value, temporarily give it the value 1. If it's less, temporarily give it the value -1. And then we relabel that so that -1 becomes too little, 0 becomes just about right, and 1 becomes too much. And so what happens when you run this chunk of code is that where here we see we got 5s, that becomes too much. Okay, so it's just some relabeling, all right? And then we define the other factor levels. And so where previously we had, so the last chunk of code is we define what the rest of the variables mean, because notice we got variable 1, whatever. We're going to call that variable 1. So there's just some relabeling. But the point of it is that after the first block of code is over, what was that kind of wide, ugly chunk of data is now a nice, clean, easy to analyze chunk of data. Okay, so if you go through the code, that's what you see are the steps that take you from the wide to the long. Okay, so then we define the jar data, and we can examine it. So here's the kind of structure of it, and here's the first few items that you've got: ID, sample, mode, variable, response. Okay, so now we want to plot it. So as usual, the way this works is there's some syntax here which says read in the template, so you can read that. But what's interesting is the plotting, so that's what I'd like to take you all through now. There's some data splitting that happens, but where things like the rubber meets the road after you go through this code is that eventually you get to a place where you've isolated the data for a single sample. Oops. And here's the data for a single sample. So if you were to take a look at this entire data set, what you would see is this is everything to do with sample 1. So when you track that in the code, you'll see that we reach a point where we have just one sample by itself, and also we've isolated the mode. So this is sample 1 flavor variables. So these are the data that are going to be used for the first plot. If you remember, I'll get it open again. The first plot was sample 1 and the flavor mode. here, flavor attribute sample 1. So we are now at a place where we've got our hands on the data that go into plotting this, this guy here. Okay? So now we need to plot it. And so what we do is we first have to compute the percentages. So what happens is that we figure out for each variable how many too little responses there were, how many just about rights there were, how many too muches there were, and then from that we can figure out the proportion and then correspondingly the percentage. Okay, so we're just kind of making this step by step. And then we run, when we run this whole chunk of code, what we have is we have to create this y variable. This is a little bit of a technical point, but this is going to tell the chart where should you put this percentage. Okay, and so there's some manipulations in here that I don't think are going to be very informative to go through. But that's, in this chart, you'll notice that we've got sort of smart choices about the position of these numbers. And sometimes when those numbers are 0, like here, we have to move things around, or really a tricky one was here, when the number is 0 here. So that y variable, when you kind of step through the code, is telling the chart where to put the numbers. Okay, so that's what that is. Okay, and so now what we're going to do is we're going to make the chart kind of step by step. So I'll show you how this works. And this is really how like ggplot stuff is written in real life. So the first thing that happens is we're going to just make a bar chart. So here is our first attempt at our plot. Okay, so that's just a bar chart of the percentages that you just saw. So you can see that we don't have nice colors, we don't have the legend in the right place, we don't have the numbers. But now what I'm going to show you is how, by adding progressive layers to the ggplot, this chart is going to, and what I'm doing here is I'm taking, starting with sample data, I'm highlighting progressively more lines of code, and I'm just running those lines of code. And you'll see that this gradually starts to clean up. I've got a whole bunch. Let me put a parenthesis here temporarily so you can see as these lines of code run. It's gradually going to look more and more like the chart that we want. So it is a fair amount of work to make a nice chart, but the benefit is that when it's done, you have it forever. Like, you only have to put the work in once, and anytime you have something similar, you can either use your exact same code or you can use very similar code. So you see it's starting to look more and more like what we want. Okay, so it's kind of gradually converging. What's going to happen next is we're going to put the legend on the bottom. Okay, the legend goes down the bottom. And then maybe we're going to change it finally to our color palette. And in this kind of iterative way, you gradually build up until eventually you have the actual chart you want. So there it is with the numbers and everything. And then you write the slides out to PowerPoint, and you're done. So the hard work for me doing this was kind of tinkering around with getting the chart to look right. But once I had a function, and so in my code, there's actually a function that does this every time that we have data to plot. All my code does is it just runs that function again and again. And so I could have, 100 of these samples, or however, or I could have, a project like this once a week for a year, and I just get to use that same code again and again. So that is the explanation of what happens in the tutorial. That really, there's really only 2 steps to this. There's get the data together and plot it, and then the rest is just infrastructure to do that again and again. into the, to make the slides. All right. What do you think? I'm not sure. Yeah, Alex.
How important is it when you make like a vector a factor? What does it mean when you make it a factor?
Yeah, factors are where you explicitly are specifying the possible values for something. And that's important if you want to get the order of the values to be, there's kind of a bunch of ways it's important. One is if you're telling the program, this is not a number. This is something with discrete values, okay? So that's important. You're also letting it know that if you don't see a value, it doesn't mean the value doesn't exist. It just means we don't have any right now. So for example, with this, with the slide where there was 0 for the 2 week.
Right.
Like here? No. Where is it? Here. Because I had too little as a factor level, it knew that it had 0 of them rather than
include it.
Right. Otherwise, it would have just put the green and pink because it wouldn't have known that's missing, right? And it also can matter when you talk about the order in which you're going to write things out, because it knows that the order in which to write these is too little, just about right, too much. Otherwise, it might just alphabetize them.
Got it.
All right. All right, let me ask kind of big picture about these tutorials. How helpful are these, and what would make them more helpful?
I think they're really helpful.
Okay.
I need to download R.
Right.
So I think that's my follow-up with you, John, is our first quarterly meeting. I need you to give me a little rundown on R.
Walk you through an R download? Okay. Okay.
That's for
I'd
me.
like to piggyback on Karen as well. Yeah, because I'm looking at it and I'm like, all right, I think I downloaded it. I don't know if it did what it needed to do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like, it's like reminds me of MS-DOS programming.
Right. Right.
In grade school.
I think DOS is a scripting language. I've actually, DOS is scripting. So it is similar, actually. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, that's right. But it's incredibly powerful. And once you get into it, it is really, the ROI is enormous. Once you get a little bit used to it, for what you're able to do, it's not as hard as you might expect. That's what I would say. That it's easier than it seems. And there are really good tools. In fact, there's this, this book, R for Data Science, literally changed my life. I've typed every single line of this book out. And I got it autographed when I was at Conference on Statistical Practice last year. And Hadley Wickham told me, as he said, wow, this is really well worn. It feels like someone's old Bible or something. And I said, yeah, well, it is the Bible for me. So, okay, yeah, I'm happy to help you with that. There are some instructions for downloading R in the tutorial instructions. I gave some step-by-steps, so you could try that and get started. But if you have any problems, please, and you don't have to wait for our quarterly call. You can just email me.
I also found it helpful to do courses on data camp.
Yeah.
They're really small exercises.
Yeah, that is a really good module. Yeah. So, and really this whole AigoraPlus is meant to be for people, who are going to get their hands dirty and learn some of this stuff. I have thought about providing more dashboards. I could provide dashboards. So there's something called a Shiny dashboard, which is just HTML. Let me show you some Shiny dashboard examples. Gallery. This is also R. It runs R under the hood. And actually, when I started Aigora, I thought I was going to teach everybody to code, but in reality, that hasn't happened. In reality, people, for the most part, want dashboards. And so that's mainly what I'm building now. But the idea of a dashboard is you've got some way to make choices, and then you have some things you adjust, and then you press go, and some things happen. Yeah, that's the idea. So this is just an example dashboard. This is just like word clouds for different works of Shakespeare. But there's, let's see, there's simple examples where the number of observations in a histogram. You might specify like random histogram. But like what I'm building now for my clients is a situation where you load data, you make some choices about the analysis, you get to see the plots you're making, and then once you're happy, you say, okay, make slides, and it makes the slides. So that's the kind of way that looks in practice. I mean, there's tons of these sorts of, I was actually studying Shiny while my son was doing gymnastics the other day. I was like watching a lecture on my phone, and I was just thinking, it's crazy how you can learn this stuff so easily, and then you do all these things. Totally amazing. Well, I mean, what better time in the history of the world to like be trying to learn stuff than now? Yeah. So if you're interested in Shiny, let me know. But I was thinking that maybe the next tutorial I would do a Shiny dashboard, where if nothing else, you have a dashboard and you can use it. Right. And if you are wanting to get into like what's going on with these dashboards, then you could look under the hood. You could look at code. But if nothing else, you could just have something that you could like. If you had like if each of you had to pick like the most common analytic task that you either have to do yourself or the people you manage have to do, what would you say? What's the most common thing? Alex, do you want to go first? Is there one thing that
I'm trying to think from Ashley's perspective, because I'm not writing a lot of client reports, but I mean, I find that it's a lot harder to summarize acceptance reports than it is like your basic difference test, obviously, because there's usually more questions and they're usually separated by texture or flavor, and just saving time and organizing that. I know using Excel for that can just become tedious, and it just makes it more likely for you to make an error. So anything with just a lot of variables, I think, would be helpful.
Okay. What about you, Lauren? Or if someone else was saying? Sorry, Karen? Didn't mean to.
Yeah, I would say, like, same for me, like just metrics on the organization as a whole. So like, how many projects are we doing per week, per month? Like, is it across flavor and fragrance? You know, was it a win? Like, tracking all of that right now is very manual. So for me, there's an opportunity.
Interesting. You know? Okay. And then Lauren, did you have something?
I would say just drawing good plots.
Good plots.
I'm always trying to find different ways of showing data that is easier, clearer, smarter.
Right. And Stella, what would be the common things you end up seeing?
Yeah, for us, I think it's more, how do we add value? So it's my question all the time when I see these reports is, so now what? You know, what's the value add from the research based on the different variables that you're looking at? How do you summarize it all? So, yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess part of the idea of these automated reports is by freeing people up from the tedium of having to make these charts and tables, then there's more time to think about the so what.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You spend so long making the chart, you haven't got time to explain what it meant.
Exactly.
Right. Would it be better if I stopped making such nice looking things and I made simpler things, but that were maybe more accessible? Do you think? Or like this, you know, obviously these are pretty charts, and I'm trying to kind of demonstrate what's capable, you know, what's possible by making them. But if this is, it might be more helpful to make a more simple chart where, you know, it's easier for people to kind of see themselves writing it. I don't know. Maybe we don't have to get an answer right now, but I definitely, like, I'm still searching for how can AigoraPlus help people the most.
You know, one thing I think would be interesting too is just descriptive profiling and potentially, you know, like thinking of, especially if folks are keeping track of products, flavors, whatever, you know, throughout a time period, thinking of data mining, right? Like what that might look like. That might be interesting.
Right. Well, at some point we're going to start talking about graph databases. So that will be a good way to store the data. But I mean, as far as just
the database that they have at Biosystems, John, if you're going to do that with SIS, their database is absolutely amazing.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you can just type in a query like, say you want to know, you've got a panelist name, Frida Smith, you can type that in and it will tell you every single sample she ever tasted, and what the dates were, and it's just amazing.
Interesting.
Really
I wonder
good.
what they're running on.
I don't know.
Okay,
But it's very
that's cool.
good.
Okay, yeah, I'll check that out. All right. Well, that's kind of, let me get the presentation back up. All right, let's share this other screen now. Okay, so that's it for this month. Please give me feedback so I can help make this better. You know, I feel like there's a lot of information and I'm trying to figure out how to package it in a way that helps people. So any thoughts you have, please send them to me. Any other things? And if you have data sets, if you do have a data set, like Karen, if you, I don't know if you can share your, if you could, do you already have your spreadsheet in some way that you could like disguise everything? You could just make it like, you know, category 1, category 2, category 3, that kind of thing. And I could make a dashboard just to show what dashboards can do. Or?
I don't have it to the extent that I want to have it, I guess. I can make something up, you know, like a dummy, like a version. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then show me what you'd like to get on the back end. I mean, some of that stuff, you know, like Microsoft Power BI, I think exists for that purpose, to do those kinds of business analytics. So you may want to, but you guys don't have a Power BI license, I guess, already?
Not that I know of.
Okay, you might want to ask around. Someone might have one.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's like for business analytics, that's what they really are like geared for. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I think we're at the end. Any other comments, requests, feedback?
Or baby pictures.
Baby pictures. Okay, I'll show more baby pictures. Let's see. Let's see what I got here. I've got a lot of baby pictures right now.
You need to put them in your PowerPoint presentation so we can see them properly.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well,
is this your second child or your first child?
It's my second. In fact, here's both of my children. Let's see. This is my son doing Play-Doh and my daughter watching. So there they are.
Cute.
And let's see if I'll try to get one really good one before we get off the phone here. Oh, this is just a cute one because this is baby passed out on milk.
Oh.
Yeah, passed out baby. That's a bit. I mean, does everyone on the call have a child or no? I mean, no. Alex, you don't.
No.
Lauren, Stella, Karen, you all do.
I do.
Yeah.
I have a 13-year-old, well, soon to be 13-year-old boy, and a 22-year-old stepdaughter.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, anyone who has a baby knows that a sleeping baby is the best. Like, when you have had a baby crying for several hours, there's nothing better in the whole world than a sleeping baby. Yeah, here she is. It's a little Artemis.
Aww.
Yeah, she's very sweet. It's a lot of fun. Okay. All right, well, that's it, everybody. Thank you for showing up.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we'll be in touch.
Yeah, cheerio. Bye,
Okay,
everyone.
bye.
Bye.